Greetings to all IHS members and other interested hornists around the world. I'm Geoffrey Winter, returning AC member, as well as a member of the American Horn Quartet and also principal horn in the Beethoven Orchestra of Bonn, Germany. This month, the IHS newsletter has the theme of horn in opera. And as a part of that, I would like to contribute a few thoughts about what is one of the most revered and often feared solos in the operatic repertoire, namely Richard Wagner's opera Siegfried, the stage music in the second act known as the long call. To start out, if this all works as planned, there will be a link here where you can download your copy of the music that I used during the last production that we played here in Bonn. Feel free to use it to follow along and perhaps make some notes of your own. For many hornists, this passage creates fear and awe. It has its own cult, where it is often referred to as the granddaddy of difficult horn solos. I have found, however, that with a bit of practical preparation and thought, what seems to be nearly insurmountable becomes not only manageable, but also fun to play. I have found it useful to think, first of all, about what is happening on stage during this solo. Siegfried, the hero of this opera, has set out to discover what fear is, and he thinks that by challenging the dragon Fafnir to a battle to the death, that he might be able to feel what, ironically, many hornists feel when they are presented with playing this piece, whether it be in a performance or as an excerpt in an audition. In a live performance situation, the hornist is most often just off the stage in the wings of the theater, where there is either a video monitor where the conductor can give various cues as to when to play, or the hornist can watch Siegfried as he wanders around on the stage and then uses the singer's cues as to when to start playing the next passage. And there is already the first point about the practical side of performing this passage. In a live performance, there can and often are much longer rests between playing the various parts of the solo. Already it's getting easier to play. There's no general rule about whether or not the bell faces out towards the audience or if it faces backstage. Each production will have its own requirements and problems, but with any luck, as the performer, you'll be able to influence any aspects that may be negative to your own performance. So go ahead and grab the music now, and let's have a closer look at what Wagner wrote. For an organic and organized presentation of the passage, it's probably easiest to divide this solo into 3 sections, each with their own musical considerations. The first section consists of the first 3 statements. Each of these uses the same motifs to develop an expectation of some sort of story coming up. The opening tempo marking is mäßig bewegt, so it's only a moderate tempo. Further, it's marked forte and sehr kräftig, or very strong. Again, things are getting easier. It's only forte, albeit with strength. But there should be no edge in the sound at this point. That comes later. A nice comfortable forte, and as the music says, the fermata should be very long and with meaning, and held out strongly, so no diminuendo. Following these instructions, it almost plays itself. The next 2 entrances each start quietly. The first with the text weich gestoßen, or softly articulated. That might seem a contradiction at first, but it makes a nice contrast to the first passage. Personally, I like to bring out the crescendo and the diminuendo, remembering that in a stage situation, everything needs to be greatly exaggerated. An audience really gets only a small portion of what we hear listening up close to our own playing. And wrapping up with the third statement, the tonality wanders into the parallel minor and leaves the listener expecting more. There's also an accelerando here, but again, the crescendo is only to forte. So while you can get a bit more aggressive here, it's not time to let loose just yet. The next section is where you get to be really expressive. The tempo is marked mäßig or moderato, and furthermore, it is marked zart or delicate. Again, I like to be sure to exaggerate the crescendos and the diminuendos. You can take your time, and be sure to tell a story here. At the end of the second entrance, here, Wagner composed an echo into the music. Note that he didn't actually put that in text form. It's only implied by the use of step dynamics and fermatas. I suggest you plan this carefully. Know what your limit is as far as how quietly you can play the last pianissimo fermata, and then use the step dynamics to play the previous fermatas so that each one is noticeably quieter than the one before. A common trap here is to relax a bit to help the pianissimo be more dramatic, but with that comes the danger that the last note will fizzle out or be not in tune. Remember not to let up on the support here, even when it's pianissimo, to make sure that the effect of the echo comes across in a healthy way. I'll also give my own opinion here. Don't play the last note stopped. That's not what Wagner wrote. The change in color doesn't really fit the echo effect. And Wagner uses stopped horn in many other instances. If he wanted it here, he would have indicated it as well. Now comes the third section of the solo. Here, Wagner has again given us many useful instructions on how to play it, which all seem to make it easier when you follow what he wrote. Starting out piano with lustig und immer schneller und schmetternder, or cheerful and always faster and brassier, we have a chance to tickle the listener with a premonition of what is soon on its way. Then comes instructions to play always more strongly, immer stärker, and then sehr schnell und schmetternd, reaching what should finally be fortissimo with an edgy sound. This part of the solo is actually the most challenging. Making a good crescendo, ending with energy and air that is needed to bring it all can be very difficult. Remember, it's at this point of the solo that your horn playing should be loud and edgy enough to wake Fafner from his sleep. I always tried to play the whole passage with one breath, and when I was younger it was a lot easier. But sometimes you might need to take a quick breath at the end of the fourth bar. If you need to do so, please be sure to phrase the first 4 bars in such a way that a quick breath makes sense to the listener. So with any luck, we've managed to get Fafner's attention. And starting at the double bar, the low brass in the orchestra have started to play Fafner's theme. That has another important effect on your solo. Starting here, you'll need to stay in tempo with the conductor. That's why you see that I wrote 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that makes it actually easier to play. You don't need to race to the top high C. You can start piano as marked, and then with a healthy crescendo, simply play steady, in-tempo, triplet figures up the scale to the climax at the top. The result is a heroic finish that is very impressive. I hope that by sharing and using these thoughts and observations, you'll discover that the actual performance is probably half as much work as it appears. Go ahead and give it a try yourself.